What's going on, everyone? Happy Friday. Thank you guys so much for tuning back in, but let's go ahead and get right into today's recap. And so as you guys can see from the screen, it was a green day overall on my account, right? And as far as how I did trading wise, I traded SQs and TQs today. I made 221 on TQs and I lost $26 on SQs, right? So in total, I finished up about around $195, right? So I did end green, but I wasn't able to hit my daily goal, right, of 1%. And so these were my field orders. As you guys can see, I had pretty much 1,000 field orders today, right? A little more. So this was one of the most amount of field orders I've ever had. I was over trading like crazy today, right? And I really thought I traded like crap. So even though I did walk away green, just, this alone, you can tell that I was just being super trigger happy, right? Sending it even when there wasn't even clear confirmation. And so I was trading from market open until, 9:30, 9:45. So for 3 hours, right, I was pretty much just trading and not giving myself, opportunities or setting myself up for success by waiting for true confirmation to establish, right? Direction was very choppy all morning, as you guys can see. And so the fact that I didn't even think about, stepping away, but instead I had to be in a position at all times is really what led to me, not being able to do as well as I could have today. So as far as what I saw going on, the Nasdaq peaked out, right? Started to get rejected around the top VWAP. As you guys can see, the past 5 days, or on the 5-day 5-minute chart, you can see that the top VWAP has acted as a bit of a resistance, right? We are approaching a more critical resistance on the Nasdaq on the long-term time frame, right? We have been getting rejected around here, so it makes sense why we can potentially get rejected around this area, right? And so on the bigger time frame, right around market open, right, we were starting to push up closer to this blue line, right, that was acting as a support around here, right, and around here, but it could potentially act as a resistance. And so, I just took a step back and asked myself, around these levels, are we more overbought or are we more of a bad deal or a good deal, right, for SQQQ? And, where we were trading, we were more of a good deal for SQQQ. The margin it has to fall is much bigger than if it were to, continue to just this uptrend staircase pattern. And so that's why I decided to potentially focus on SQQQ. And so what ended up happening? Well, market ended up peaking out, started to sell off. I got into SQQQ, and by 6:45, I was up already over $240, right? And literally what ended up happening, direction changed. I ended up giving it all back. I did a bad job of locking in profits, right? And every time this thing would try dipping, I would think it was going to start to sell off even more. And so I was being very hopeful, right? Once direction started to, clearly change, I was being too hopeful trying to predict where another drop was going to be before it tried potentially pushing up. And so I got wrecked. I ended up giving back all my profit. And as it would start to sell off, I would make my money back. It would end up pushing back up. So the same thing ended up happening over and over, and I didn't learn my lesson, right? I was over trading like crazy, just trading like crap, right? And so these direction changes were very constant, and what that should have told me is it's probably not the best idea to even be in a trade, right? Why am I putting my money at risk if I don't even know exactly where direction is going to be headed? And so as you guys can see, it was just being very choppy all morning. And once we did finally start to sell off here, I made back some money. But as you guys can see, what do you guys think ended up happening? Gave it all back, right? Or gave back some of it. And that's why I ended red on SQQQ, right? But luckily on TQQQ, I was actually able to walk away with a profit. And that's pretty much where I got in, was right around this area where I made most of my money, I would say, right? Once I saw the Nasdaq validate the bottom VWAP as a support, as it did earlier on in the morning and in the pre-market session, right? I waited for this thing to break above the EMA. I got into TQs, right, with lightly down here, about a 25% position size. As it broke above, I would average up. As it would pull on back, I would start to sell again, right? And once it validated this higher high here, I got back in, right? And this is where I made a lot of my money back. And what ended up happening here, I was anticipating some form of pullback. So once it did pull on back, right, I got back around here, but I did get burned a bit. But once it did start to, form this higher low, right, back up to the middle VWAP, this is where I made, majority of my money back. And that's where I ended up walking away. So I'm just glad, right, I was able to walk away with, in the green. given the fact of how choppy it ended up being. But as you guys can see, the Nasdaq ended up climbing, right? So it ended up forming these higher highs and higher lows. And so what made me think that direction could possibly change here, right? I know I just mentioned that SQQQ was more overbought. Well, as it was at these lower levels, right? It obviously made sense to me why we could potentially bounce here, because we were going to try to validate these higher highs, right? And so as we are forming these higher highs, as it pulls on back, right? It's previously bounced around this area. So am I going to be surprised if I don't lock in profits and it ends up changing direction and bouncing here? No, right? I'm going to say it was completely my fault for not locking in profits, right? And so that's how I really should have handled today. I should have been more, aware of, when it wasn't necessarily the best time to be in the market, right? And when I did see potential, trade setups, I should have definitely been more, I would say, patient and less aggressive, right? Less trigger happy, because I just kept giving back money as this thing would, push up and down before it continued to sell off. And it was pretty frustrating, but ultimately I'm not going to complain, right? Because I was green on the day and I am ending green on the week. But I hope you guys were all able, to at least, make some money on this rally over here. If you were in TQs or if you were shorting the market, hopefully you locked in profits. But that's pretty much how it went for me today. I want to thank you guys so much again for your time. If you guys have any questions at all, go ahead and drop a comment, and I will be more than happy to answer that. But other than that, that's pretty much everything. We will be posting a recap on Monday, so I hope to see you guys then. Take care and have a good rest of your weekend.